Next on the agenda is the street closures policy that we kicked back last week, and Les McDonald and Tyler Palmer are going to bring that forward. Fixing the other holes that needed plugged.
The other holes that needed plugged. Good afternoon. Well, this is an item that's been before this committee before. As you mentioned, has been to the City Council for consideration. There was some good discussion at that last session, actually both sessions, but at the council session, there were some questions asked about some things that were not addressed, and then some revisions that were requested for this policy, and we were asked to bring it back to this committee to review those changes. So that's why we're here. So, of course, we're talking about the policy and procedure for right-of-way permits for street, alley, and sidewalk closures, neighborhood block parties, and parades, just so the audience knows. And the first area where we made some changes was actually one that did not come from the discussion with the City Council. That actually came out of a newspaper article that was written about the discussion at the City Council and a question that was raised from that. In all of the sections under conditions, so parade closures, neighborhood block parties, construction and community event closures. There are, not on construction, but on the other three, there are provisions in there that talked about how it was limited to 1 day per weekend. After the article and the interpretation that was made of that, we could see that we needed to modify that language a little bit. The intent was not to say this could only occur during the weekend,
right,
but that if it did occur during the weekend, it could only be one of the 2 days of the weekend. So we've modified all three of those sections with the language that's here that now says that weekend events shall be limited to 1 day per weekend. So hopefully that will remove any lack of clarity.
I was wondering about that change because I didn't remember discussing it. And
that's how that came to be, and it was a good catch. So the next item is one that the council did talk about, and it's under Section 4, Part C, under neighborhood block parties. And this is one where we had some options there about allowing block parties without insurance and by providing a release of liability agreement, or allowing block parties with submission of proof of insurance. And the council was of the opinion that we should just keep both of those rather than picking one. So what you see here now is the still somewhat marked up version of what it would look like, but essentially it's that the applicant would provide a signed release of liability and indemnification agreement, or shall submit proof of insurance coverage in the amount of $500,000 for the event, and the City of Moscow to be named as an additional insured on the policy. So we're keeping both options as requested by the council, just cleaned up the language a little bit and added the indemnification agreement portion. The next section is still in Section 4 conditions, but it's in the construction closures. This has to do with the question that was asked during the council meeting about whether or not the city operations with respect to street closures, construction, maintenance, all those type of operational activities would be subject to this policy and would have to obtain permits for every one of those actions. And the thought was that no, that would not be the case. So this language was added that the operations and maintenance activities, including construction of new or reconstruction of existing infrastructure, would be exempt from the permitting process.
Yeah, it was implicit before, but we wanted to make sure that we made it explicit.
Right. And again, this is something that, as the agency that does the permitting, we're very cognizant of the requirements of the permitting, and we strive to make sure that we're meeting those requirements without even having to go through a permitting process. And that's something that Tyler's worked on greatly with his crews and will continue to do so with all of those folks out in the field under his observations.
So that's why with the language in this part of the permit, we wanted to emphasize that we're not exempt from the requirements, just from the permitting, because we hold ourselves to the same standard as we'd hold anyone else to. It's just the permitting portion.
The next item was under Section 6 for noncompliance. If you'll recall, there was a commentary here that was highlighted in yellow about the council needing to address how to proceed with this item, the item having to do with the possibility of commercial gain by the applicant through use of public right-of-way. And the council asked that we modify this a bit to include some language to to the effect that the events are limited to events open to the general public for which the primary purpose is not for direct commercial gain. So that is now in there by the applicant or the associated parties. We've also added that incidental private commercial activity is allowed. If you recall, the discussion went around if there's a band downtown and they're selling their CDs out on the side, is that okay? Well,
Or somebody's selling hot dogs.
or selling hot dogs, but the idea here is that we want to allow these types of community events, make sure they're open to the public, but they're not being held for the sole purpose of commercial gain. There may be some commercial gain incidental with the event, and this is meant to address that.
And then I noticed that you
I didn't know there was a different phone number.
thoroughly confused the
Phone number.
issue by putting in a false phone number. That's always
Yeah,
good.
actually, they're both real phone numbers. It's just a question of where we want the phone to ring. So yes, that is now actually upstairs.
That's what we do when we don't want the calls.
So, and that was it. So those were all the changes that we have proposed based on the conversation with City Council. So, any questions at this point?
You guys got any questions? Think we kind of hit the high points.
Yeah.
I think you did a good job of cleaning everything up, so it's very understandable to everybody that might want to put on a block party. They know exactly what the rules are up front, and it's pretty clear and concise. I think that's well done. I think we should forward that for
Yep.
another look at it and get a vote on it this time.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
this is a resolution, but it's also changing, well, I guess it's just a resolution, but let's go ahead and put it on regular agenda. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.